Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again for another lively conversation. And this week is a follow on from last week a little bit. Last week we talked about the, oh my God, I can't remember what it was called. It was the kiss cam scandal. That's what we called it. And we talked more about not so much why two married people would be having an affair, but more about why we as the witnesses, and as I said last week, I'm not going to include myself in that because I didn't find any enjoyment or pleasure or anything. It was just very sad to me and distressing the families, the innocent parties that were married to the two people that were very publicly having an affair. So I thought this week we could actually focus on why people have affairs in the first place, why we have affairs.
There we go. Seems very... Okay, relevant to people, so they might even see from a different perspective of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Because often, and I did admit last week that when I was much, much younger, I wasn't married, but it was, I was in a relationship and I had an affair. But it was so brief, I could barely call it an affair. It was like, whatever it was, I did. I stepped out of the relationship. I did not inform my partner that I was doing so. And I absolutely take full responsibility. At the time, I told myself there was something wrong with the relationship, there was something wrong with him. There were all these reasons why I succumbed. And really, honestly, and I was thinking about all the reasons we have affairs, and mine wasn't just a one area. It was, oh, I'm so sorry about that. Oh,
surprise.
My phone on. We'll leave it in just to show we're human. So as I was saying, when I was really going through what the many reasons are why people have affairs, I was certainly checking a lot of the boxes. And for me, I would definitely say one of the boxes was, say a few boxes first, and one was definitely low self-esteem. I succumbed to the attention. I was also, probably, if I'm really, really honest, under the influence of some things at the time. So whether it was alcohol or just alcohol, I think more than anything. But when your inhibitions go down, you're more susceptible. I used to be a costume designer. I was on location. You form a little band of, it's like being part of the circus when you're on location doing a movie or something. So that played into it.
Yeah, almost like a vacation fling in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't reality. It was a sort of I wouldn't say fantasy. It was just I don't know what it was. But besides, what I'm trying to say is definitely low self-esteem, unhealthy boundaries, childhood wounds that I had growing up. My mother was the other woman. And so it was sort of normal for me that there weren't clear boundaries around marriage. And it's only as I got older and got into therapy that I was able to look back and go, definitely not the best model for healthy relationships and healthy modeling of how to be in a healthy relationship. So there's a lot more I can say, which I will join in later. But Barry, jump in here. I think I asked you this question already. So have you ever had an affair? Okay, let me clarify that, because you've told the story about when you were with somebody that was with somebody else. But when you've been with somebody, have you ever stepped out of that relationship?
No. Well, let me say it this way. The temptation has been there. And I've had eyes that wandered, so to speak, in terms of loyalty of heart, so to speak, or loyalty of loins. No, didn't cheat on my partner. The thing I want to say, though, that you didn't say, because cheating does take different forms in terms of affairs that, yes, oftentimes are based on the way we're brought up. But one of the things that you didn't mention, which is important to include, is that some people want to find reasons to justify the reason they had an affair. And somehow they made it okay because there was some reason they said, well, I'm doing it because of this sort of thing, rather than unconsciously doing it or just not knowing what the boundaries are. Because that's the thing, just the conversation.
100%. That's what I'm saying. I take full responsibility because I was blaming my partner. I'm not getting this from the relationship. My partner doesn't provide this. I had all the excuses in the world, but they were all pointing at somebody else or the relationship. Whereas, as I said, the older I got, and with some help and some therapy and some coaching, I was able to see nobody was to blame but myself. And and again, I'm not going to berate myself. I understand, fully what was driving me. But, again, at the time, it was completely unconscious. It was all somebody else's fault, not mine. Well, not fully. I mean, I did take some of the responsibility, but I certainly held my partner responsible too, and he wasn't. He absolutely wasn't. And that's the part I want to be very clear about is nobody makes us do anything, unless you're saving a child's life or something, something that you're propelled to do. But choices like that, you really do have to take ownership over.
That is one of the key points, is about being responsible, because the reality is it's always a choice point. Even saving a child is, yes, there's no way you would not do it, but it's still a choice. Part of you can still say, I can't do it, but I wouldn't do that. But the thing is, ultimately, it comes down to we choose what we do. And, the devil made me do it. No, that part of us decided we fun to do it, did it, or led us to do it. Thing. So understandably, so that affair is yes, sometimes we can be so enthralled and tempted by the other person, we get pulled out of our relationship into that affair, which I know has happened to some people. At the same time, the self-will, the self-awareness, maybe he was on vacation at that time, so he didn't actually take ownership. But the reality is we always have choice in what, I was just saying, we always make the choice to do certain things. So, it takes two to tango, so to speak. It does require a willingness on the person in the relationship to cheat, to be in that affair. It's not just the person outside pulling them out. So the thing is that having an affair, which we want to get to in a moment, is really about what the underlying reasoning is for choosing that. Because that's what it comes down to, in a sense.
Yeah, and there can be, I think we have to clarify here, there can be very justifiable reasons why you're not invested in your present relationship. That's valid, and that takes two people. But the actual, and that can lead to a discussion of, hey, I'm not getting my needs met here. I feel that I'm getting attracted to other people because X, Y, and Z. It's not to blame each other. It's just to say there is something lacking in our relationship, whether it's sexual, intellectual, spiritual, whatever it is, that is making you find other people far more attractive. Now, and I also want to say here, it's natural to find other people attractive. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't consider that cheating. If your loins are going, sorry, I'm find you attractive. That's human nature. That is not cheating. That is, if you are actively feeding it and telling yourself that this attraction is more than it is, which is a passing sort of an emotional reaction, physical reaction to another person. And if you're feeding that fantasy, and then maybe you are having an emotional affair to a degree. But if you simply find somebody else attractive and you go, oh, that's interesting, where did that come from? It's normal. I mean, my God, it's good to feel alive. It's good to, I think I mentioned my old therapist, I loved him. He was so great. He used to say to me, love as many people as you can, just don't have sex with them. But allow those feelings of love and appreciation and attraction to be there. Just be normal.
Right. Yeah, but as I was going to share this before in a conversation about how my mum used to say to my dad, you can win the shop as much as you want, just don't go in and buy anything. It's the same, it's that sense of not committing to anything. So, because I grew up in a family that didn't have that going on at all. In fact, I lived in I grew up as a cul-de-sac, like a closed small street. And there was one, there was one couple where one of the partners stepped out and did have an affair, and it created ripples of distrust through the whole neighborhood, like the whole community was so, because it wasn't necessarily close knit, but there was like unspoken rules we had, and so that feeling of disruption was such a surprise because everyone was so, quote, normal. Whatever was going on, we didn't know about, but the sense was we're all like normal couples with kids. That was the way it was. So affairs can have ripple effects beyond the relationship, of course. I mean, don't talk about the kids and stuff. But I think one of the things that goes on in some people's choice where they choose to have an affair, maybe for men more than women, is that men have something inside them, and I'm making a guess at this. I'm not saying it's actually accurate, but where men feel like if they choose a divorce, then go find another partner, they feel like they've failed. Whereas if they cheat and have an affair, it's not the same level of failure. It's almost like aberration sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Well, no, not to me. You know me. I get very sort of like not so clear lines between men and women. So I do find it very interesting. So I've never heard of that. It wouldn't have even crossed my mind to think that maybe I'm just trying to think about it for a minute. I mean, I think if you are the breadwinner as such, and it's more of that sort of, and the mother is staying at home raising children, maybe that type of man would be sort of like telling himself that, I don't want to abandon my family. I want to follow through on my commitments, but I am bored as hell here. My wife cares more about the children than me, so therefore I'm going to have a bit on the side, and it's perfectly fine. I can have my cake and eat it.
Yes.
I'm teasing me, but I can see that, and that's really me being silly and being extreme. But I can see an element of actual care and commitment, that they don't want to fail on that commitment, and there's still love there, but they are not getting certain needs met. And instead of, again, it depends on, in an ideal world, we'd all be able to talk with our partners and say, hey, I'm feeling temptation, I'm feeling pressure, I'm feeling ignored, I'm feeling that you put, the children ahead of me, or anything like that. Instead of having that conversation, I can see that a man might just think, hey, an affair is the solution. So I stay married and I stay fulfilling my role and my commitment. I can definitely see that would be the case. It's interesting. I'm just thinking about that, because there are certain relationships where, say the spouse has given up work to raise the family, where they maybe have become very dependent on their partner, the breadwinner. So whoever, we're using men and female and male roles here, but it can be either way. But say the stay-at-home parent has given up their career to raise their children, and the other partner still has a career and an ability to bring in money. And that could be scary for the person that's given up their career to be that stay-at-home parent.
Absolutely. It's in such a state of dependency on the other person to take care of everything. But I want to slightly shift gears, because you mentioned this about solutions. There's one of the reasons, I think, is, frankly, and we talked about this before, is when communication fails, as in people aren't communicating. And because the reason I think sometimes of affairs is because it wasn't like an instant switch went, okay, I'm having an affair now. It's like because there was a progression of lack of connection, lack of intimacy, lack of communication that kept the relationship thriving. And some couples don't realize there's ways of recharging the batteries, so to speak, to renew that initial excitement that happened at the beginning of the relationship, that what that partner has been looking for outside can be found inside the relationship. But it's something that requires full intention on both partners and a conversation, which frankly doesn't happen when you're having affairs. You keep it secret. Great. So it is a shift of energy of like, how can I bring this challenge I'm having, this difficulty I'm having in the relationship, to my partner in a way that doesn't make them feel blamed or responsible, so we can actually construct something different out of this. That would be for me, the ideal solution.
No, absolutely. And I have definitely been in that position, and it's a little scary to be that
vulnerable.
Because the thing is, you don't want to hurt your partner. You do want to be with them. And the reason that you are sharing these feelings is because you're actually fighting for the relationship. You're giving the relationship a chance. And it's only through that honesty that I think there is an opportunity to go a little deeper in the relationship. But it's risky because you fear hurting. Nobody wants to hear, hey, I find somebody else attractive, or I've got wandering eyes or anything like that. it's painful. I mean, if I was on the receiving end of that conversation, I wouldn't particularly be happy to hear that. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it happens. I'm not naive, but to actually really have that level of a deep, open, honest conversation is definitely scary for some people.
Yeah.
There was something when I was thinking about about you saying that, I was in a relationship where my partner, apparently, I didn't know at the time, but was a serial cheater. And when I found out, I was told, "What did you expect? All men do this." And I was like, "I don't think so." And it was also a cultural thing. I was told that all men of his culture did it, so therefore I should have known. I should have known. And I said, I don't remember that being in any vows I might have taken. I don't that
Yeah.
disclosure. But so I don't think, I mean, as many men as I know have cheated, I've known women cheat too. So I don't think it falls into a only men cheat and women don't, or men cheat more than women. So that's where I was saying about the roles of male, female. I know lots of women who feel another reason why people sometimes have affairs is resentment. It's it's a silent way of like doing an FU to their partner. They feel resentment for a lot of things. Maybe the way their partner is treating them or ignoring them or whatever it is. And it's their way of getting back, even though they're keeping it a secret, but they feel underneath, they feel that they've evened the score.
I would say, yes, that's true. And on another part of that, because you hinted at it, is that because they felt so disconnected or so disliked even by their partner, they're looking for affection somewhere, and they're looking for that feeling, that piece is missing from somebody else. And so it's almost like they're fulfilling a need, not necessarily to get sexually fulfilled, but to be loved and to feel safe with somebody because they're not feeling with their partner. So it's not so much necessarily, it isn't always about, because I think it's always the case, about revenge or getting back. It's almost about looking for something they don't get for the partner somewhere else.
No,
just because they,
that in as an addition to the reason we tell ourselves is the sex is stale, it's, there's no excitement there anymore, or there's no emotional connection, or I'm feeling neglected, or we've drifted apart, or, there's, as I said, there's all these reasons we tell ourselves for why we're doing it. I was just throwing another one in there about the feeling entitled to, because you've seen your partner as not just not coming through for you as on emotional, spiritual, sexual, whatever levels, but also there can be this retaliation. That it's a revenge thing as opposed to just being bored, feeling unfulfilled, or whatever the other, or as we said in the beginning, that low self-esteem, that needing that that newness, that being pumped up, that being told that you're beautiful or attractive or handsome or whatever it is that people are saying to you that would maybe even tempt you down that road.
Right. No, it's just basically, to bottom line, this idea, there are many reasons and choices and causes for people to choose to have an affair. I don't think we'll talk in this episode about the repair afterwards, but more about how do we head it off before we get there. Because I did throw one idea in the ring about having communication, having willingness to ask, and to have that vulnerable conversation too. And frankly, to back it up even further, is that ideally there's this commitment in a relationship to have a continuous communication. I was I'm in an ELON program separate from this, but one of the things that one of the professors talked about in the conversation, totally unrelated to something else, was that relationship requires a recommitment and a participation every moment. And the challenges in relationships, we don't tend to do that. We tend to get into a relationship and we might check in once a day or once a week sort of thing with our partner about how's things going. But the idea of being simply that every single moment with our partner, even when we're not, we're thinking of them, we're communicating with them, we're sharing with them where we stand and asking where they stand, it would transform most people's relationships. It's a big ask, I know, but that was something you threw on the table as a real definition of how to be in deep committed relationship, is choosing it every single moment.
Yeah, which is you just used I was about to jump in and say a word, and then you just said it. And there is a phrase which is like, I choose you. And
yes.
ongoing thing. It's not like, oh yeah, I chose you, 10 years ago, and hey, I'm stuck. It's like,
yeah, we did it as we're done.
Yeah, I choose you today in this moment. I choose you, and it is a lovely thing to have, to come from that place, because when you choose somebody, it's not just like I choose you over having an affair. It can be when it's like I choose you. There's an intentionality to that. That is like I choose you over my ego. I choose you over being right. I choose you over being selfish. I choose you over, and there can be so many ways that I choose you can apply that keeps a relationship fed. I call it the bank account of goodwill. It's like keep putting those deposits in, because you never know what happens where that other person may go through a very challenging, difficult time, and they can't put the deposits in, and they need, more to be, so you need a good balance. I always say, good balance of goodwill, that because you want to, it's going to ebb and flow. Sometimes one partner is more invested than another. So you need that there, that you've got room for that ebb and flow to go. I think I mentioned this last week. I'm just finding it fascinating. I'm reading this book called Mating in Captivity, and she talks about Eros, and that we equate. I do want to do a show about this, so I don't want to go too deeply into it, because I think it's really interesting. But she differentiates between a lot of people used to think, the sexual relationship you have is indicative of the love you have and the depth of your relationship. And she really separates the two things out. She's like, you can be deeply in love with somebody and not feel sexual excitement towards them. She also talks very much about the familiarity. For some people, can actually inhibit their sexual desire, that there has to be, not has to be, but for some people, there has to be some level of separation. And I think it's really worth bringing up here. But again, I think it's worth a whole show, because it's fascinating, particularly to me. But that pair is simply, we call it like the newness or the excitement of something new out there. But what can happen is sometimes, you say with your spouse or your partner, the familiarity is so intense that it overshadows the desire. It's almost like exactly, that there needs to be separateness within the relationship for two people to come together.
Yes.
And I think that's really, really important for everybody to hear. As I say, I think it's so important, it deserves its own show. But that's also part of what sometimes can happen in with someone having an affair. They absolutely love their partner. They love them very, very deeply. But the sexual desire is completely dead, is gone. And it's nobody's fault. It's just something that can happen. As I say, we'll go into that deeper. But to understand that just if your partner has had an affair, it doesn't mean that they don't love you. It doesn't. It might not be a loving act, for sure, to deceive you and to go behind your back and to do something. But it doesn't mean that they don't love you. I mean, in many cases it is. The love that the person has convinced themselves they're not in love with their partner anymore, therefore they're justified in finding it somewhere else. But there are some people that are very conflicted in the sense that they know they love their partner deeply, but there's just no sex there, or sexual tension, or whatever it needs for that sort of, eros to sort of be there, that the erotica to be there, that they have to find it somewhere else. They don't have to, they choose to find it somewhere else. Right. So I can see Barry ready to say.
Well, you said something about how, what you said in the book about how having space and distance with your partner is what's needed to create the connection again. Well, when you're having an affair, that person is at a distance. So you're almost got that same energetic being pointed somewhere else. So it's almost like if you take space from your partner, and it's true, I know, because I do this in my own work with masculine and feminine energy, sometimes we lose touch with our natural polarity, which is what creates the attraction. One way to rebuild it is to go just do separate things so you can recharge your own batteries, so to speak. Because when you come back together, it is renewed and fresh and exciting and wonderful again. Yeah. So that temptation for an affair it's almost like the battery's already charged up out there because there's distance there. There's polarity there. There's all those things that keep us attracted, which we've lost with our partner because we've got so comfortable and familiar with them.
Yes.
So that separation, not to spend time apart in large numbers, but especially if a couple lives together, works together, does everything together, no wonder they're going to find it's going to be numbed down because they're so familiar with each other. So it's almost like you want to take time away from each other. Maybe the guy goes with his guy friends for a weekend, or she goes to the spa for a day, things that can recharge batteries. So when you come back together again, you're refreshed and you're also restored back to what originally brought you together, which is really the whole point, ultimately, to not have an affair.
Well, exactly. That's exactly it. Is what attracted you in the first place? It's usually the newness. And as before, there's a lot of projection there. It's like, oh my God, you're my perfect person. You're ticking all you're into my frame of, because we don't know the person, so we're just making stuff up. But it's exciting. But that sort of, and again, it can be, male, female, whatever. It's that need for some level of distance, and to be in denial of that, I think, is really troublesome. Because some people think, no, we've got to get closer to have great sex. And as I said, sometimes it can almost get to the point of feeling a little sort of incestuous. It's like, but you're like my brother, my sister. It's that sort of, that can happen when we don't keep it exciting, new, and alive. But again, this is not blaming the person that has been hurt by their partner having an affair at all. This is about, we're talking about both people doing what they can do. And that's the other thing is, I think when you have been cheated on, you can sometimes just point the finger and say, well, it was all the other person's fault. They chose to do that. I would never have done that. But the thing is, it's not to blame yourself that you caused them to do it, but it's to also look at, and I don't believe in that sort of, I think there was a whole theory about affair-proof your marriage, have sex every day. Just absolutely archaic and not true at all.
Right.
For some people, it's like, oh, just more. But I think we are the more responsibility we take for our part in any of the relationship, no matter what's happening, the more we empower ourselves, the more that we know we have a choice. We have a choice to do something differently next time or to participate in a different way. So it's really about empowering oneself when we take some responsibility.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, so I think next week, I think we're going to be talking about that. Does familiarity breed contempt? I think that's a good one.
Yes.
I think we will talk about that. I think it'll be a good one. And how to keep, just wrap it up here, Barry. Just, how, we've talked before about how to recover from an affair. So I don't really think, if you want to watch some of our past episodes, I think there's one called Recovering from the Affair. So this is more about understanding the reasons why someone might choose it. So, which is
what you can do to head it off before you get there as well.
Exactly, which is not having sex every day with your partner. That's not going to heal it's not going to quell the temptation to step out of the relationship. It's usually a lot more complex than that. And feeding somebody sex every day, thinking it's going to solve the problem it's not. The hunger is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah, it can be fun to have sex every day. However, it may not stop you from having the affair if you don't have to work. Yes.
Every day, I'm simply saying it's not the solution to all of the ills of a relationship when one partner is stepping out. It's a much deeper thing. It's not. It's more often than not, it's nothing to do with sex. Very small is to do with sex. It's all the other components that go into it that need to be looked at and as we said, discuss between you.
So join us next week.
Everybody, have a great week.
Take care of yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode, fresh and shiny, as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.